Game development failure is another one of these. Why I failed at creating a video game. I don't think you can actually fail unless you stop. But hey, maybe he actually quit game development and this is his only video. Let's see. I can also see a reason why that might be the case. Maybe. We'll see.
All right, game designers. Class is in fucking session.
Okay, I'll wait for the ad. I'll wait for the ad to finish. Sorry about that. I'll wait 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'm gonna wait for the ad, Andy's. You are welcome. Thank you, sir. All right. So let's see why this guy... The last guy was in Unity. And he was trying to do network coding. Maybe this guy got defeated by the network raid boss as well. Let's see.
And we got a lot of ground to cover, so strap in.
Let's go. Yes,
first
sir.
Things first, I gotta turn back the clock a little bit.
Go! Time warp!
How many, like a year or maybe 2 years? That's my guess. The last guy stopped after 1 year. Maybe this guy's able to do it for 2 years.
Let me take you back to 2013. I was still in
Bro, what? That's like 10 years ago. More than
high
that.
school, just a wee little baby shit that didn't know nothing about making anything. But I wanted to make games. And I just found out about a little piece of magic called Unity 3D. Now, keep in mind, back in 2013, Unity sucked.
Something changed? Because I feel like that didn't change until today. Or? Am I wrong on this? At least the leadership of Unity changed, and now you can make games without the logo. So that's nice.
But you can still make ass games with it, no problem. And that's what I did, because I wanted to make games. So I found this really dumb free horse model on the asset store, and I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna make a game about horses, and everything in it is gonna be this dumb fucking horse. So I made the absolute most crackhead stupid game you could ever possibly witness. I consider it to be my first game.
Hey, bro, he still has his first game. That's amazing. I have lost most of my first projects in Unity because I constantly had to switch computers because they would break. Like, how many of you still have their first projects? Like the very first things you do. Like, some of these things are more than 10 years old. And usually they just get lost to time, right? And you don't have something like an external hard drive where you save this on. It's all safe, bro. For you? Really? Damn, that's amazing. GitHub, huh? Yeah, so you mean to tell me that a 12-year-old is gonna log into GitHub and magically know what Git is? Or a 13-year-old? You're out of your mind, bro. Also, now GitHub is more prevalent than it was back then. So no. Sure, all gone. Yeah, for me too, man. Good day. I have some projects from the early 90s. You gotta be older than Bytekeeper. My first project was an attempt at an RTS. Might have had some scope problem, yeah. Maybe, yeah, right. I tried to make Witcher 3 as my first game, bro. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that went very well.
And my magnum opus. Now, back then, I cannot stress enough. I did not know programming. I did not know code. I was not yet a computer scientist. All I could do was copy and paste random code snippets from tutorials, modify it slightly for what I wanted to do, and pray to God that it worked.
Hey, but that's the first step, bro. That's how you start. That's nice.
It's a disgusting...
You know what this is? 10 years ago, that was vibe coding. But without an AI prompt, you would have to put the AI prompt into Google, then find the correct web page and copy the code from there into your program. It was already prevalent 10 years ago. We already had that. Nothing changed, actually. It's the same thing today. Now you just pay money for this.
Amalgamation of C# and JavaScript, and it's a miracle the damn thing even compiled. But if you want to play this disorienting sensory onslaught, you can. There's a build of it from 2015 on my itch, and it's the last state the game ever got to.
How many games does this guy have? Wait, how many games did you make? It's quite a few hashtags, my brother. Where's your itch? Here we go. Covalent bonds. Oh wow, this guy has... Look at these games, bro. Tic-tac-toe in C++, amazing, cool. Why is it loading so slowly? Itch, hello. Damn, this guy made more games than me. Crazy. Yeah, I mean 10 years, right? I've been only like doing this for 4 or something.
When I decided I was done working on it forever. But I learned a lot from this. Now I held the key to the castle. My childhood dream of finding out how in the fuck video games get made had been accomplished. And now I can make anything. But before I can do that, I need to get good. Fast forward.
Time warp.
It's the year 2020. I've been grinding, making games for fun, going to school for computer science, learning how to make the computer bend to my will. The world is changing really fast. And there's a game jam. My friends who like to make games recruit me to help them out.
Bro, that's so fast.
And they introduced me to the new hotness on the street. This shit is some open source wizard fuckery. It's called Godot, and it's free.
I mean, Brotato was made in Godot, so it's not bad. Okay, let's see. Maybe I'm the only person that had a bad experience with Godot.
And it's good. But I had no idea how to use it, so the game we made sucked. But I was intrigued. This engine was so sleek and lightweight, and for the first time I felt like I had a game development tool that gave me all the tools I needed.
Wait, so 2014, the Godot engine looked exactly... I mean, engines don't really change much,
without
right?
having any bullshit in my way. I wanted to get better. I wanted to master Godot. And I remembered my past, my origins. I remembered Horse Game. How Horse Game was my way of learning Unity, so I thought this is the perfect opportunity.
You know what I think is amazing about Unity? That is, I don't see it too much in other games. Unity can make these crazy, cool looking, bad looking, but also cool looking horror games that have these weird animations and overlay effects, graphic effects, and it just looks really cool. And I always wonder when I see someone like Queso play these games, is like, how did they even do this? These graphic effects and all of that stuff. It's really cool. You can make these so fast in Unity as well.
I had long since joked about making a sequel to the generation-defining...
Like, for example, for like what we just saw... A second? Go back by one
this
couple...
Is the perfect opportunity.
Look at the house here. I wonder if that's just a shader effect, or if he drew the house like that. Maybe he just drew the house like
joked
this.
About making a sequel to the generation-defining work that I had used to learn Unity. Now I could learn this new engine inside out, and to do it, I would make the sequel, Horse Game 2. Only this time things would be different. Now I had a bachelor's degree. Now I was a computer fucking scientist. I wasn't some little baby shit that had no brains and no clue. I was smart. My brain was fucking huge.
Yeah, sure. Like, I learned nothing in computer science. I don't know about you guys, but when I went to university, I left it basically the same when it comes to programming knowledge. I didn't learn much.
Huge. Now I could make a game.
Sounds like it's ironic, yeah,
so
me too.
began the work.
I guess. Making this fucking video games. Dawn of circa December 2020. Oh, cool. That's about the year that I started getting into game development too. I started 2020 as well. Awesome. He started a bit, he started earlier.
Godot is amazing, but it's far from perfect. Even today, as I'm making this video in 2023, there's a lot still being worked out. But especially back in those days, Godot was looking rough.
God, sometimes Godot just fucking pisses me off, man.
There was a
Wait a minute. What did this guy just say? I need to hear that again. Wait a minute.
looking rough.
God, sometimes...
No. Sorry about that. Professional Godot hater. Yeah, can you stop?
Doubt. But especially back in those days, Godot was looking rough.
God, sometimes Godot just fucking pisses me off, man.
There was a lot of issues and gaps that had to...
Aha, I see. You know what the funny part is? After I switched to C++, the only thing I would rage about is something like libraries that I had to use. I never once raged about C++. Maybe the code editor, like Visual Studio Code, but about the language, not a single time. It's crazy. I'm not making this up. I'm genuinely thinking, trying to find the time when I would genuinely, except for const. That's only though Because people in chat told me to use const. I wasn't using const. I was having an amazing time. And then people tried to tell me to use const because that's better. And I was so stupid to believe them. That's when I got angry. Because it would literally tell me that this needs to be const and this can't be const. And then, oh, since this is const and you're changing it here, then this entire thing, the entire chain of function calls can no longer be const. Because right here, you're changing it. And then I had to change the entire function chain. So that's the only thing that I hate about C++ const. Listen, it could be a noob-like thing, but still. Yeah.
Overcome if you were going to put together something good. And I had a lot of plans for this game too. A lot of standout features that would make the game an impressive and flashy experience. I also had a lot of really stupid ideas about how to structure the game's underlying systems that, at the time, I thought were really clever. They weren't. A lot of the foundational systems were designed in ways that ended up causing a lot of headaches and problems for me down the line.
I'm just wondering, this looks like a physics problem, by the way, physics. He is, like, I would assume more than 20 years at this point, because he has a computer science degree, so he's probably above 20 at this point. This game, when I look at it, I'm not trying to be mean, but it doesn't look like it has a big audience, because it doesn't look cute enough for girls, but it also doesn't look appealing enough for like men to play. Like, I wonder if it's just a fun game or something. Like, I'm just honestly stating, like, from the outside looking in, what do you do in the game? What is the point of the game? It's called art. Yeah, but don't you want to make games to become a game developer? And in order to do that, you need to find an audience for your game. Horses? It's overrated. Yeah, okay. It's for brownies. Oh yeah, so we see a physics problem here in action, by the way, which we encountered in Godot 2 in the 2D game. That was amazing, yeah.
Starting with something I'd like to call dynamically rendered procedural world instantiation.
What?
Also, this is the start of Chapter 2, Blunders. I'm using procedural in this sense to describe world rendering, not world generation, which at one point I did actually implement an infinite
Oh, that
procedural
looks kind of nice, though.
world generation. I ended up throwing this away because for the type of game I was trying to make and the way I was using it, it really did not fit.
What is the game,
Anyway,
though?
the idea was based off of LOD, which stands for level of detail.
Yeah.
It's a standard practice in which games throttle the amount of detail given to rendered objects based on proximity in order to save on performance.
Yeah, and by the way, Unreal Engine has Nanite, and it seems to be a problem with Nanite that if it gets really close to the camera, that it makes simple objects appear more fine-grained than it actually needs to. So, for example, you could have a cube, and there's only so much that you can do with a cube. And then when you have Nanite activated, it would turn the cube into multiple. Like, basically, it would go from, where's this? I could be wrong here, right? It's been a while since I looked this up. Maybe they changed this now. But essentially, if you have a cube like this, and the best way to do a cube is basically that, right? You have like two triangles on each side. Oops. Yeah, let's do it like this. And then I suppose what I understood from the paper was that it would turn the cube into multiple triangles, trying to, what is this called? Tessellate it? More and more the closer it got. So I don't even know if you tessellate it like this, but that's essentially what would happen. And so the closer you get into this, the less efficient it becomes when you have a bunch of cubes like that. So again, listen, I could be totally wrong here, but that's what I read a while ago. So as far as I know, it only decreases detail when needed, not increases it. That could be too. I could be wrong here. Just can't pull details out of thin air. Maybe. Listen, I'm open to being wrong. I could have misunderstood this too.
Costs. Close up, stuff is rendered in full detail, while stuff further away is reduced or even not rendered. But rather than trying to implement this, I thought, why even have stuff far away in memory?
Wait, why do you implement that? Shouldn't Godot handle that for you if it's an engine? Like, am I stupid? I'm using an engine, I'm making a 3D game, I add LOD. I mean, he has procedural level generation, so guess Nanite doesn't exist yet in Godot, or it doesn't exist at all in Godot, so you can't really use nanite on your terrain. That being said, though, is terrain really that much of a problem? Don't you just do a view frustrum and it should be fine?
At all. I want to only load in the immediate area and have transitions between areas. You mean like levels? No. Not like levels. What I'm talking about is much, much dumber. I would have scenes that would be an area containing everything necessary for that part of the game. Models, collisions, events, interactables, effects, etc. And when I want to go to the next, I could have some event trigger to load in the next area. And when the player crossed over, I could have another event deload the previous area.
It looks
At first, this was pretty cool. I could do these wacky transitions, sometimes seamless, and other times flashy when changing levels.
Okay. Oh, wow.
But there were problems.
What?
Firstly, unloading a level from memory will cause the stack frame to halt while the memory is freed. For individual nodes, this is practically unnoticeable.
So that's like a limitation of the engine, and that's when people come into chat and they tell you, hey, why don't you change the engine, bro? The C++ code of Godot is open source, you know. You can just go to the GitHub, sign up, and become a contributor. Yeah, let me change the engine. It's not a limitation, it's just how computers work. No. A level is a piece of memory. When you have another level, you load in a piece of memory. And you can make it so that you're loading in one level while the other level still exists. You don't need to unload the level. His issues are way different. I don't know. It looks like to me it uses the same memory for different levels. So it basically unloads the level first, so it lags, frees the memory, which is totally not needed at all. You can just reuse the same memory and allocate less. I don't know, like, am I stupid or something? Like, if I unload a level and I only have one block, that's my block. And maybe a level 1, takes up this much space. And then I have a level 2, which is bigger. It takes up this much space. If I unload level 1, I just set this counter C to 0. And then I load in level 2. How do you unload previous level while having a current level? Okay, so if I have the current level, then I just have 2 blocks. Then I alternate between the two. Or I keep both in memory. That shouldn't be too much data. How much data is in memory? And then the textures associated with that could be decoupled from this. They could be, instead of having the textures in here, you could have an ID for the textures. So I don't know. I would have probably, like in C++, this sounds so easy. And if you could, listen, let's say you have like 2 blocks, right? Let's say this is the CPU. We're talking about like there's in graphics programming, there's always the CPU and the GPU, right? So let's say we're talking about the CPU. You have 2 blocks, let's say level 1 and level 2, and sometimes the blocks are filled, sometimes they are not, right? They could be filled. You might be wasting, so this would be wasted space here, okay? But you still have this. You're wasting a little bit of CPU memory. Fine. Now you can transition between 2 levels. Now, this would be the CPU, right? Let's take this, move this over here, and then obviously there's always the GPU part as well. Now, when we're talking about a game like he had, the textures won't be too big. But let's say you have a block on the GPU with a limited amount of memory. And this is the GPU here. And you have textures in the level 1 that are currently loaded, and maybe it takes up this much space on the GPU. These are the textures for level 1. And obviously the textures for level 2 won't fit in here. Then you would have to have a way to load in the textures from level 2 into this. Slowly unload these when you're transitioning. I think what I would do is, and this is what Vulkan offers you, that's like a queue that can lazy load the textures in a separate thread. Basically, there's another thread that runs next to the game that slowly pulls out textures from here and puts them in here one by one. And so as you're transitioning to level 2, it would slowly load in all of the textures. And then when you go back to level 1, you turn around, you get back to level 1, it resets this thing. Basically, it stops loading from here, but it then starts loading from here again. I don't know. And then all of the textures that are still in there, they stay, while the other ones, they get replaced. I don't know. Maybe that's too stupid. That's the first thing that comes to mind, but that would be a seamless transition without having any lags at all. But you would see visual popping of textures. So you definitely have a visual artifacts going on there. Though in a game that looks like this, I can guarantee you on modern hardware, the textures all fit into this. Not only do textures 1 and 2 fit into this, you have way more space. So that would be textures level 1 and that would be textures level 2. They would definitely fit into the GPU, for sure. Unless you have a very, very old GPU. And even then. But yeah, anyways, on bigger games, that won't be the case. So that's why you have Skyrim, right? Skyrim makes you transition using doors. And then they can slowly unload the textures and while overwriting them with new ones. Came here to see some nice coding. What's happening? Oh, we did the coding for today already. We're looking at a game development failure. It's very interesting to see this. Maybe we can learn something from this.
Noticeable. When you do this for massive packed scenes with hundreds or thousands of nodes,
that's laggy.
yeah, it starts to become noticeable. Even with the shitty, low-res, low-poly graphics I was using.
Damn.
Back in, the Stone Ages, there was a game called Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And in that game, it would simply flash a quick loading message on the screen when it needed to halt to load in a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but it wouldn't stutter, would it?
An area that wasn't yet rendered.
Okay.
It would only be for a second at most. So if that were the end of it, I could have kept going on like this. But the problem is that this version of Godot implemented the GLES3 renderer, which needs to halt the stack frame in order to compile the shaders before continuing. Newer versions of Godot have fixed this, especially Godot 4.
Can't you pre-compile the shaders? I don't understand. Why would you need... Wait, do you need to compile the shaders all the time? In GL? Can't you pre-compile them? Am I dumb? I have written a GL renderer. Load shader. Or was it create shader? Here. What do? We read the file and then we compile the shader. So you have to compile them. Another reason why OpenGL is just terrible. That's crazy. Because in DirectX I can pre-compile. Wait, so what if you can't compile the shader on a system? Are you just... You can't run on the system? Because I've had that error. I'm not watching videos that are negative about Godot to confirm my sentiment. Absolutely not. Pre-compile it into textures. Wait, what? Shader sources? Compile shader? Into an ID? No, I don't think I can get the source code. Interesting.
Which implements the Vulkan renderer.
Ooh.
Normally, this problem doesn't exist, but because my scenes had a lot of shaders that were moving in and out of memory all the time, they would all need to be recompiled, which would bring frame rates down so low they made PowerPoint slideshows look like Daytona. The workaround would have been to have a scene loaded at the beginning of the game that stays loaded and has a mesh with all the shaders the game uses applied to it. That way the shaders are already compiled and would stay in memory even if other scenes or other nodes that were using them were...
Yeah, I mean, a compiled shader, that's not that much memory on the GPU. You can keep them in memory.
Moving in and out of memory, because they'd be referencing the same shader that stays in memory. And had I known that at the beginning, I could have organized my files and used some materials in a way that would make that a non-issue. But having worked on the game for a year at this point, who knows how many unique duplicates of materials and shaders are out in random scene files.
This is the one thing I hate about Godot, and I'm sorry that I come across as a negative, but in Godot by default, everything is a reference, and then you have to do make unique, and it's so hidden in menus that if you don't know about it, you will be either you have a bunch of references to the same object, which is terrible, or you have a bunch of unique objects when you don't want them to be unique. So you're wasting a bunch of space and memory and have memory fragmentation because you're creating a unique object when you don't want to create a unique object. And when you're a noob and you don't even know what that means, you're just gonna make it unique because the tutorial told you to make it unique. That's what it is. And so that's where a background, it's not a skill issue, it is being uninformed, not knowing.
And applied to random nodes. So even if I could like get this process working, I don't know if it would even work. Reorganizing and testing this part alone would be a Sisyphean task. Ultimately, what frustrated me the most is that as I tried to preserve this dynamic area instantiation system, I had to tack on loading procedures to go between and ready the next areas as they grew in complexity. So what was the point? I was building loading screens to help make the thing that was supposed to prevent the need for loading screens. And it didn't even work. What would have been smarter would instead to have been just designing a level as a scene.
C++. A level is a scene.
Each level with a copy of the player that loads in whatever data I need to in order for it to look like it's continuing from the previous scene or the previous game session. What beautiful lessons we learn and how great our next children become. But more on that later.
I like that a lot. See, this is all of the pitfalls you probably go into when you start learning game development and you're using an engine. This guy feels like me, but instead of having chosen C++ as their main thing, he chose Unity or Godot. So I probably would have had the same issues. And I would have been furious. Because when I use something like an engine and I can't change it, I get so mad. That's why I can't use GIMP. I hate it.
Blunder
It's the one thing I can't.
Resource-based inventory. The first horse game had flags.
How can you have a problem with an inventory? It's an array of IDs. That's all it is. And maybe a counter with each ID so that you know how many items you have of, for example, an arrow. Skills?
Indicate whether or not the player had acquired an item. Whatever that system was, I cannot remember how it worked at all, but I can assure you it made no sense. This time, I would attempt to make a proper inventory system. Spoiler, it would be neither proper nor would it function well. In previous projects, I like to work with a
Sounds like my first project, man.
very simple array of items for the basis of an inventory.
Yeah.
Picking up an item, simply added that item to the array.
Yeah, easy.
An instance of an item would be the same regardless of if it was on the ground, in the inventory, equipped to the player, or displayed in the inventory.
See, this is already the problem with engines. Why does there need to be an instance of the item? All you need is data. And you need to have two arrays. You have a level with an array of items, and you have an inventory with an array of item IDs. If it's in the inventory, then you don't draw it in the world. If it's in the array for the world, you also draw it in the world. It's so simple. Why are we even talking about instances? That's so dumb. Because now you have to worry about an instance in your inventory? No, it is a separate thing. In your inventory, you don't have an instance, you have an ID and a counter. Bruh. Oop, yeah, it is.
Item prefab and script would have everything it needed to be used and rendered in whatever context it would appear.
No, we're talking about rendering something. Oh my god, okay. Let's move on.
It's a problem once I sought persistence. Godot does not have a very robust save and load pipeline built into itself.
Hey,
Not like
the reason why this is so funny is because just today, at the start of the stream, we had someone come in and talk about how a saving and loading routine in Godot didn't work anymore because the loading routine was trying to assign floats to ints and it would crash. It seems like that's still an issue today. That's funny. Funny how these things repeat itself, huh? Literally a Godot hate. It's not a hate watch stream. Okay, we're just making assumptions here. Okay.
Game Maker Studio, which can simply store and resume the state of the game at runtime. You have to design your own save system, how data gets written to a file, what that file is structured like, and how your game parses that information in order to convincingly restore the game to the state it was left in. My lesson to all fledgling game developers, do this first. If you are working on a project, as soon as you have even the tiniest shred of gameplay, if you know your project might someday need persistence, might someday need to have save files, build that system as early as you possibly can before anything else.
Hey, we have the developer of Crystal Guardians in chat. He's using Unity. How do you do this in Unity, guys? When you're saving and loading the game? Is it difficult in Unity? Like, how do you persistently save data? Do they aid you in that? Or do you have to build your own system as well? I would assume Unity gives you something that is predefined. In Unreal Engine, saving is easy, yeah. What about older versions? I have my own system. It's easy stuff. Yeah, me too, but just use easy save. Is that a plugin for Godot or something? Unity asset? I see, it's an asset. Unity has a lot of plugins like easy save. I see, to JSON. Aha, so basically you have a save structure or some data that you want to save, and you update that during the gameplay loop. Then you call it to JSON and save it to the disk, and then you're loading that JSON, and you're when you load the JSON, it fills in the data on startup, for example. That sounds easy enough. That's basically the same thing that the guy did in Godot, but it was having trouble loading in the JSON. Unity's default system is player refs, but it's trash. No one uses it. I see. Okay. So but they have assets that are really nice. Saving as JSON is not very efficient. Yeah, what if you only have like, I don't know, 10 kilobytes of data? Then saving it as a JSON, like how long does it really take? Like a second? I don't think that's a big deal. And even then you could make saving and loading in the game on a separate thread. So then it's disconnected from the game and you can just keep playing. Loading probably not, but saving. Can save to binary. Binary, saving to binary is the problem when you change data in your binary file. Now all of the data is misaligned. And you have to make sure that you read the binary correctly in the proper file format. If you don't, then you can have issues. And so there's a lot of issues that can happen with binary files. And you can't really read the binary file once it's stored to the disk. It's just a blob of data, which makes it difficult because now you can't make assumptions about the save file unless you properly version the save file and you know that this is version 1.2 of the save game and this is what the data was laid out at that version. So yeah, binaries are nice, they're fast, but they also have that downside. They're not human readable.
That framework to work off of.
I have to worry about that a lot with my stuff because I only save binaries and it's really difficult to keep track of and make sure that this is correct.
As you design systems going forward, will be so much better and easier than vice versa, as I learned the hard way. Which, by the way, this blunder is also a bit of a twofer because it also includes that additional blunder, which was Blunder 3, not building the saving and loading infrastructure early. When the game had a static state that existed from the start of the game until however long you played, the player and NPCs used a lot of the same underlying code to manage their inventories and choreograph how items kept track of references they needed. I had systems like Interaction Controller and Equipment Manager for handling the ins and outs. Equipment managers had an inventory, an array of items.
So this is already something that really annoys me. Let's say I have an item and another item is a reference to that. Now we need to keep the reference in our inventory so that the item that references our item in the inventory knows that it exists. I find that so stupid. Because it would be so much easier if an item exists in the world and it needs another item to function rather than have a reference. It just looks in the level. Does it exist? No, it doesn't. It looks, a skill issue, yeah. It looks in the inventory, or it actually exists in the inventory. Is the player near me? Oh, the player's near me. Let me glow. That's so much easier than having a bunch of references that you need to keep track of.
And can control
no way that you know. You only need an ID, essentially. Just an integer value.
What was currently equipped, how equipped items handled input and interactions, the whole 9 yards.
It's not about ECS. It's about storing data that is, I don't know what I call this, a spider web of unimportant stuff. It's like the Diablo 4 situation, and that was even present in Diablo 3. You open up your stash tab in town, and then it's not only loading up your stash tab, but also the stash tab of the person next to you, and the person that is behind you, and the person in town that is right next to the blacksmith, and every other person in town, because they need to make sure that you're not cheating. So not only is it loading your stash tab, it's loading all the stash tabs. And that looks like, to me, that's a huge reference problem. And the funny thing is, they haven't been able to fix this since 2019. It was already present in Diablo 3, which is why you couldn't have many characters in Diablo 3. There was a limit to how many characters you can have. Cakez, I think I explained it, chat. You only store an ID, and for all the static data, you store dynamic data. If you have any, for example, upgrades, item level, etc., an ID. You only store an ID. Yeah, but... so, for example, for an inventory, let's say you have item IDs in your inventory. Let's say you have arrows. Wouldn't you want to store an ID together with the counter? So, because you can have duplicates of the same item. I know that in Skyrim, it bundles arrows together, but it doesn't bundle the same armor piece together. You have the same armor piece, I think. Or does it? Wait, it does, right? It bundles daggers together? Wait, does it? I think it does. Yeah, it might do. How is loading everyone's stash tab on the client side fixed cheating? I have no idea, Zergfried, man. These guys don't know how to make games anymore, man. Listen, Diablo, the Blizzard died in terms of Diablo when they fired Blizzard North, or when Blizzard North went away. Now, I'm not saying that Blizzard North was the epitome of coding, but at least they were the epitome of game development. So that died.
But the problem with a resource-based or instance-based inventory is that if you want to have a merchant NPC, for example, that sells, I don't know,
Oh yeah, we also have a good video coming up where we look at the code of Diablo. I think it was Diablo 1. Terrible code base, but amazing game. That would be interesting to look at.
Planks. Then they need to have 100 or 1,000 wooden planks in their inventory. That means instantiating 1,000 instances of that item and adding it to their inventory and keeping those items in memory.
Oh my god.
To be able to do this.
When I hear this, I'm so glad that I don't use engines, man. What people have to deal with when using engines, I can't. I just can't.
It didn't cause much of a performance hit or take up too much memory, as well as ways of holding this off until the particular NPC.
It's a skill issue, the video dude. It's not the engine. So I see. So he made this mistake and should have done it differently. But I think you run into this issue in engines. It's very easy to run into this issue in engines because you don't know. Because you don't really know what a reference is. When I started Unity, excuse me, I'm sorry. I did not understand what a game object was compared to a prefab. I just did not know. And I also did not understand why a pool for example, projectiles would be better than just a bunch of projectiles in the scene. Why would I need a projectile pool? Can't I just make a new projectile and then delete it?
Have their inventory initialized.
It's a good thing they're doing these mistakes faster. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Where you could go up to any NPC or container and loot them for any and all items they might have. It just added a feeling of so much depth to those worlds, knowing that every NPC you saw walking around had a full inventory of stuff, including the clothes you saw them wearing, and who knows what else they held on to that you didn't see. This problem became obvious once I was trying to say.
When I asked my kid to program C++, she does not know what a reference is. Yeah, that's why you don't tell her to program C++, but to program in C. Because I didn't know what a reference was in C++ until 1 to 2 years into C++. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
The game with
like for real. I did not understand references because the concept of references was so foreign to me that it didn't make any sense. But once I started using pointers exclusively, that's when I finally understood memory. What about learning some theory law? I did. I watched a lot of theory videos about C++. Listen, I understood the theory, but I didn't understand it. It doesn't make much sense, but I just didn't make any sense to me. She's going to be 100% vibe coder. My girl, yeah, maybe she's going to be a vibe coder.
NPCs. Every NPC in the world with their inventories full, potentially.
I think the problem with references is that they try to hide the fact that they are like a pointer into an array of memory. And the reference can never be null. I think that's the problem where it's confusing.
Hundreds or thousands of items. Each item contains so much data being written in order to preserve its exact state. It was an issue of volume. As the number of NPCs and the number of items in the world grew, it quickly reached a point where each save would take noticeably longer.
I can't even read this because it's so blurry, man. Holy.
What? The seconds piling up as the mountain of items to iterate through became longer and longer.
Yeah, because you have the entire item in there. You don't just have an ID, and you're loading all of the stash tabs of all of the players, man. This guy's this is the beginner mistakes this guy made in his, I think, second year of using Godot, right? That's the same mistake that Blizzard is doing. A AAA company. Like, think about this. This guy is making the same mistakes that Blizzard is doing, but he's a solo indie game developer compared to a AAA company like Blizzard. That's crazy. How can... It doesn't make any sense. Blizzard was using AI. I don't think they used anything,
Loading
man.
was the slog. Parsing through the data to instantiate the correct world, then iterating through all the nodes of the world to correct their state, deleting nodes which had been
This video
removed,
shows how much you learned. Yeah,
NPCs,
it's great. It's a good
instantiating
video.
Thousands of items just to place them into their inventory slots.
Good
if I
stuff,
saved
yeah.
about halfway through the tutorial, with only 5 NPCs initialized, I could spend 15 seconds waiting for the game to save and up to 5 minutes waiting for the game to load, and not even being able to load correctly. So what did we learn? Well, representation is key. Okay, I
like this video a lot.
Here. At some point in 2022, I picked up a job working as a game designer for a big company.
Okay, so wait, this is what he learned from 2020, December, to 2022. So it's a bit over a year, and then you picked up a job in that time.
And I'm really happy about this. I get to work in a game engine every day using my skills and knowledge on creative endeavors and problem solving, working on really crazy and complicated technology. It pays the bills while also affording me a lot of much needed time to recover from burnout, organize my life, and work on my own projects.
Nice.
But what does this tangent have to do with anything? I'm getting to that. You see, in the work I do, we often don't have the resources or the time necessary to implement fully functional game mechanics in the scenes we build. And most of the time it's really unnecessary given our use case. For all intents and purposes, a lot of the time we're using the games we make to merely give the world's fanciest, most elaborate PowerPoint presentation. Thus, what I've learned here is that when it comes to making games, a lot of the time less is more. If you can fake it, you sometimes get more game than if you tried to do it for real.
Let that sink in for a while. Fake it. True. So what would that actually mean? Like, an example would be nice. If you can fake it. What does he mean by that? Obviously, you just can't fake a game. The game needs to exist. But maybe he means visuals? I don't exactly... For me, I don't understand what he means. Bro is describing a prototype. A game is basically faking already. I think he means hacky solutions instead of proper implementations. So basically, what almost every game is. A bunch of hacky solutions. Maybe he means that. You don't need to have the perfect system. You can just have a bunch of hacky solutions. They work together and then you have a game. Maybe he means that. Because that's what I'm getting to too. It's about creating the illusion. If I have a game with complex enemies, it doesn't really actually mean that I have complex enemies, technically speaking. They just need to look complex to the player. I see. Okay.
This has led to a pretty drastic shift in my thinking as a game designer, and although some of the conclusions I've reached may have been obvious to a lot of people, I think I'm figuring out ways of building larger, more complex, interconnected systems that hide the fact that not very much is actually going on, while still managing to convince the player that they are, in fact, playing a game. Getting back on track with what I learned about Horse Game 2, how I should have implemented things is as follows. Defining items as data, purely representationally. I already had files that were necessary for looking up an item by name and finding the path to its associated scene file for instantiation. I should have taken this.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I mean, I guess you do that in C++ too. You have a JSON file of items and then you want to instantiate an item, you load the JSON file during development. But when you're pushing your game out to the public, then you turn that JSON file into a binary file called asset pack. And then in the asset pack, you have a bunch of items that you can reference. You find the correct byte offset into the asset pack file, you load the data, and there you have the item. You keep the file handle open at all times, so you don't have to close and open it all the time. I guess that's correct. And then when you load an item by ID, you look into the asset pack file if you don't have it already in memory. I see. Okay. It's still like, I liked having it in code, but I guess it's the same idea.
A step further. This should have been where items were defined, their values, what you can and can't do with them in their inventory, what scripts to run when they're used, a reference to the item when it's in the world, on the ground, a reference to the item to hold when it's equipped. All of that could have been broken apart and the game could just have intermediary representations of items. An inventory could just hold an item by name and how many of it we had.
Oh yes, we got it back to this pre-watched, of course. Maybe name, maybe ID. Exactly, bro. Smart. He learned. Sure. That's awesome.
We could need in any other context could be
this guy's
by
a
linking
giga
it up in a single data file. Saving and loading could work much in the same way. Rather than preserve every node state in exactly the way it needed to be, figure out what data is really necessary for creating a...
Do you understand what he's talking about now? His shift in thinking? He was trying to save everything. Now he thinks in terms of data. It's awesome to see him going through this. He went from a state of object-oriented thinking to a state of data-driven thinking. He thinks about what data do I need? So for example, you have a hero in your game. What do you need to keep track of for the hero to save it? You don't need to save the hero's texture well, maybe the name if you can give him a name. You don't need to store the entire mesh. You just basically... If you have a level, experience points, and talent points, you need maybe a bit mask of different talents added to the hero. And then some bits are turned on, and these things that are turned on, that's the talents he learned. And then maybe a couple of levels for health, stamina, level, experience points. And then you decouple that data from the actual representation. Yeah, don't use a newbie, don't use a bit mask. A bit mask is fine. You don't... What are you talking about? That's a bit mask is fine.
Convincing enough illusion that the game is continuing from where you left off. Who's in the scene, who isn't,
it's not a
what's
newbie,
been
take you wrong.
deleted, what's added, and where. As data becomes less comprehensive and more representational, our overhead becomes a lot simpler and more efficient. You can see how this extends to what I said earlier about making transitions between areas work in the same way. So, yeah. There's a lot more I could cover about what went wrong in the game. I could spend days poring over every GD script file, every mismanaged node, every line, every function, dissect all the mistakes, and maybe even revel in a few moments of lucidity. But for now, I think what matters most is asking, what do we make of this? Well, I hate to use the term post-mortem. I still love this project. I worked really, really hard on it for a long time, and I hate the idea of giving up without finishing. I really thought this was going to be the big game that gets done, wrapped up nice with a bow tie, and sent out into the world. Something I could finally call finished. But the gravity of the situation is that I don't think I can bear to continue on this project any longer.
I think that's fine if you don't stop making games, because you learn from this game. You probably need to make a smaller game to be able to finish it. Marshall Banana, thank you very much for
in the state that it exists now.
Okay.
I'm planning to take all the things I've learned and do the unthinkable.
Yes.
I'm gonna rebuild Horse Game 2 from the ground up in Godot 4. Does this mean starting over from scratch? Well, no. See, we still have all the assets, 3D models, animations, textures, sprites, sounds, music, etc. All that still is there. That saves us a huge amount of time. Additionally, we know how stuff should be laid out. We know what we're gonna try and
I
make.
want to see this. Cast charm to interact with horse. Wild horses will display their primary mood only. Tamed horses will display once, which can be panded to in order to gain pep. When a horse is born, it randomly assigns a weight to each of these 6 moods. This is the horse personality. Interesting. Horses will interact with each other and retain a relationship. If their moods match, their friendship will increase. After a certain point, horses can have good enough friends will go on dates. What is this game? Is this a horse dating simulator, bro? What is this game? What is this? Is that this one here? Well, now you looked into it, guys. Boom. Gotcha.
So we have the old version to go off of as a blueprint. We just do it better this time, applying all the lessons learned. So the second attempt is going to not only be better, but it will be faster, more reliable, and easier to work with. Fewer bugs, fewer problems, and everything beautiful preserved. I'm gonna try
until you get to the same point in your game's lifetime when you have to make progress again. I think this is how it works, guys. And I've seen this this pattern happen to me too. Basically, you make a game. And it's not like a straight line, but you can think about this as like progress from 0 to finish. And if this is the finish line here, then when you make a game and you get to this point for the first time, let's say you get here, you quit because maybe it became unbearable. Then this portion of the project is easier for you. So you make really quick progress until you get here on your second attempt, if this is the first, and then this is the second attempt. You get really quickly, but then you slow down here again, because that's new territory. And maybe you get to here. And this part, every time you encounter new territory, that's the difficult part. So maybe this time you quit a little bit later, because that's what happens when people quit, right? They quit at a certain point where they can't go further because they have created a mess here in the first part. And then, again, this part becomes easier. You know how to avoid some mistakes that you've done here, and maybe you can push a little further. That's why people tell you to make smaller games, because then this line isn't as long. You should quit Tangy now? No. What I have done is I have never quit. I have hit these barriers, but what I did was, instead of completely starting over, I went back till here. And then I redesigned, let's say, this part and pushed through this part again to make more progress. And then maybe I got till here and then I had to go back to this. So basically for me, the development cycle looks like this. Oftentimes. I keep having to go back. But every time I go back, I push a little further. And I'm nowhere near this part, by the way. So for me, right, the line, this extends to like oblivion, like somewhere here. Okay, so the line is definitely not here. Okay, maybe I'm here, but the end line is, I don't know. It's gotta be somewhere. You know, somewhere in the far distant.
Try to continue working on it regularly again, and while doing so, document the process, creating devlogs and using the process to compare what we fixed to what went wrong the first time. I don't know how long this will take. I don't know what the schedule will look like, or honestly, I don't really know much about anything at all. I'm just a guy that likes making video games.
Yeah, same bro. Same bro.
So, if you're interested in the project and want to follow along, please hit subscribe and consider supporting me on Patreon. Additionally, there's a free demo of the old version of Horse Game 2 on my Twitch that you can check out.
Good
if
stuff.
you like this video, hit the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think, or if you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions. I hope you stick around through this project's lifetime, and be sure to check out my other series on other games I'm working on my channel. Yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. That's all I got. Peace.
Boys, thank you very much for the video, bro. I really like that. That's probably me if I don't use C++. Cancel. That's me. If I don't use C++, then I would have gone through the same issues, 100%. This is the video, guys. Really, really good video. Very inspiring. This basically when you just dive into game development and you try out stuff. This is what happens. You learn a lot from this. And it's cool to see that he's learned so much over, I think it was 2 years. So yeah, if you guys would like to support this guy, right? Watch the video at 1% volume, right? If you're coming from YouTube, and watch it till the end. You can do it in another tab. You don't have to have this tab, look at this tab all the time. You can basically do something else in another tab. But you will be able to support him best when you watch the full video on, let's say, 1% volume till the very end, because then YouTube sees that this video is doing very well and it will push out the video to more people.